So now I want to talk to you about pruning. It's a common subject. It's something that most new gardeners have questions and concerns about. It can be intimidating because, again, trees are one of our most expensive investments we make in the landscape. So I want to give you some pointers and some things to think about today. The first tip is you never want to start pruning in months that end with ER. So that's September through December. The main reasoning on that is that's when our trees are going dormant. Their whole focus is surviving our winter months. They're stopping producing their chlorophyll, they're shedding their leaves, they're shutting down their system, there's carbs storing up for the winter. They don't want to be focusing on setting up any type of energy to heal any of those wounds. So when you think about pruning, and pruning is a cut, it's same as cutting your lawn. That is considered a pruning cut. The plant is going to respond to that in some way. And so it's important to know about timing of that. So anytime after December, we can get out and prune our trees. Ideally, it's got to be better weather for us. So February and March are ideal months for me to get out and do it. 1, better weather. 2, we can start to see our trees. You can start to see them maybe start to leaf out. You can start to see branching issues. And you can get out there and really start to see them in their environment. There are 3 things that you can always prune for. And that is if something is dead, if it's diseased, or if it's just dumb and doesn't make sense. We don't want to just come in and just be happy to start cutting off things. I always tell people, if you have a tree or a shrub that you spend hours and hours pruning, you've got the wrong plant for the wrong space. Nothing should take you hours and hours to prune in order for it to look good in your space. Now, if you want a tree or shrub that is in a rounded shape, why don't you buy a tree or shrub in a rounded shape instead of trying to spend hours manipulating something that maybe grows in a vase shape into that shape? For me, I love to be in my garden, but I don't want to spend all day Saturday shaping things into a certain shape. And it's not healthy for the trees. You never want to come in and ever take the top off of a tree. So if you have to come in order for a tree to fit into a space and take off that top, you're basically killing the tree at that point. You take off that top of the tree, you've just negated its life, and you might as well pull the tree out. So when you're coming in to make pruning cuts, again, if you've got a dead limb, you've got a disease growing on it, those cuts can be made at any time. But today I'm looking at this tree and I'm coming in, it's the new season, it's a newly planted tree. I'm gonna look at this. I'm gonna be taking these off because this tree has been in here for a year. I would take my stakes off. I would go to the base immediately. I would make sure there's no suckers at the base. Those would always come off. They can come off at any time of the year. You don't ever want to put any chemicals on those, any like root killer. There are some stump killers that you can use, but honestly, if you start to cut off the suckers at the bottom immediately, usually you can get ahead of them and they won't continue to sucker. So now we're looking at branching structure, and this is what I call dumb branching. And you can see right here that these branches are starting to cross. If I was to let this tree continue to grow, and I was to let this branch continue to grow up, you can see right here, it's crossing. It is totally going to compromise the health of this tree because as this branch grew up and it's got this curving shape to it, it is going to compromise the whole health of this tree. So in looking at this tree, I know that these 2 branches have got to go. There's no way that this tree is going to be able to be supporting all 3 of these branches safely. So I know I'm going to come in and I'm going to make these pruning cuts right here. And when I make those pruning cuts, I need to make them really in and tight right next to the tree. I don't want to come out here and lop off anything out here. That's no good. That's not healthy for a tree. You want to come in and bring that branch right down to the base of the tree. You want to be pruning the tree when it's as young as possible, because you don't want to come in and have to prune off a big mature branch later in life, because that's so much harder on that tree to hill up over it. And you want to make sure that it's a clean cut, that your tools are clean, that you don't have any residual residue from another tree that you've pruned, in order to not be passing any type of diseases in it. Again, when you go in to make your pruning cut, if it's hard for you to do, you probably have the wrong tool. Pruning cut should be fairly easy if you have the right tools. I have a really nice set of coronal loppers that are sharp, and it will be really easy to come in and make that pruning cut. So I'm coming in, and I'll come back and I'll have to bring in a saw and I'll have to clean this edge up. These loppers are actually a little bit too big for this project, and I have a smaller hand one that I'll come in and clean it. You want to have, normally you can see on a branch, it kind of juts out at an angle, and I want to be as smooth around that angle. It'll be easier for the tree to hill up over that hole if it's at the same angle as my cut. If you've ever seen old trees and it looks like they have donut holes on them, that's because improper pruning cuts have been made and it's created a donut hole. Because ideally you want that hole to be completely closed by the bark in order for no pests or disease to get inside the trunk of the tree. So again, I'll come back in through and I'll take my saw and I'll make that a really nice clean cut. But ideally that it's very smooth right there. That'll allow the tree to heal. The tree is young enough that it'll be able to respond to that cut. And now that it will start springing out, it will start to heal this, but it will also now start to send its energy up here. It will start to leaf out and sending more branching opportunities out here. And it will make for a healthier tree. You also need to take into account, you never want to prune more than 1/3 of your tree off in one growing season. So if you have a tree that you've never attended, you've never done any pruning on, you have to be a little gentle with it the first season. You're gonna have to take your time addressing some of these issues. I see this a lot with flowering pears. It's a really common landscape trees. They need a lot of love. One of the reasons we prune is we need to open up the canopy. You want to have air and oxygen and sunlight to get through all of the tree. If we don't open that up, and that's a really common reason why flowering pears die and they get a disease called fire blight, is because there's not great oxygen flow. So as you're looking up through it, there's a lot of probably pruning cuts you can make to that particular tree. So hopefully this will get you started this season. You're gonna get out, you're gonna start looking at your trees, you're gonna find ways to create healthier trees, and you're gonna have more success in your garden.